So I wanted to talk about one of the biggest mistakes I've made in my career in Jiu-Jitsu, which was early on focusing too much on understanding like guards or the open guard in general. So an analogy I like to use to think of this is like if you try to understand chess, even if you have the world's best supercomputer, it cannot tell you what's the best first move. Or even a few moves into the game, the computer can't tell you what's the best move because there's so many variables, right? So when someone new is learning chess, you often start with the end in mind. So the first thing you do is you learn to checkmate with like a king and a queen, because if you know what you're doing, that's an absolute certainty. You should be able to do that. And once you do that, you learn to checkmate with like a king and two rooks, and then a king and two bishops, and eventually I think you can even do a king and two knights, and you kind of work your way down from these endpoint positions. And then you also start developing by doing chess puzzles. So you have a situation where it's like mate in 3, and it's guaranteed that if you call check, the guy has to move out of check, and then it platforms forward and you're guaranteed the finish, right? And I think Jiu-Jitsu is very similar in that you want to focus on the end points first, right? So there's so many different ways you can play the open guard, and no one can say for sure what's correct. And I would even argue that Jiu-Jitsu is more complicated than chess, because at least chess you can imitate the moves, or you can repeat the moves with a computer and calculate it. Whereas in Jiu-Jitsu, every person you train with has a different body type, or a different gi length, or a different flexibility level, or a different strength level. So there's so many variables, you can't really calculate it, right? So if you're going early into a match and you're trying to decide what's the best move, no one can really say, right? But when you get towards the end of a match, like for example, if you're in a arm bar and your opponent's defending with his arms like this, we can probably break that down into what's the best choice, because there's only so many things he could do. He could like lock his hands like this, he could do this, he could do it the other way, but you can really break that down. And the same is true with any end point, right? So like if you have someone in a rear naked choke, there's only so many ways they can defend that. If you have someone in a triangle choke, there's a limited amount of ways that they can actually defend the position, right? So if your finish points aren't super strong or they're not perfect, then the positions that lead into those are always going to be faulty as well. So if your triangle choke isn't perfect and you don't know how to finish it that well, I can teach you spider guard or close guard, but when you get to the triangle, you won't be able to finish it, right? And kind of like investing, like we don't know what Jiu-Jitsu is going to look like in 10 years. So you may end up developing a spider guard game or whatever game, and you don't know that in 5 years, it may be that we discover, oh, that position's not as useful, right? So you can't really say how the game's going to be down the line, but there's certain positions you can certainly say, right? So we know for sure the triangle choke is a very critical aspect of your game to have mastered, right? Finishing an armbar is a critical aspect of the game to have mastered. Knowing how to hold side control, knowing how to hold mount, knowing how to hold the back. You're never going to lose by mastering those positions, right? Furthermore, if you want to learn how to pass the guard, at its core, passing the guard is getting around the legs and holding the guy in side control for 3 seconds, right? So if you cannot well hold side control, you'll never truly be good at passing, because you can't hold side control, so how can you effectively get around and hold them, right? So, and also as you learn to hold side control well, you're going to understand the fundamental mechanics that are involved in locking someone down. That's also going to naturally transition into your passing in general, because you'll kind of understand the things that ultimately have to be in place, i.e. like getting the shoulder blades flat, getting chest to chest connection, right? And this is going to be true for multiple things. If you don't have a good back control and you're trying to work a berimbolo or crab ride or some complicated back take, but when you get to the point, the end point, you don't really truly know how to hold the back, it's going to be very difficult, and you're not going to be able to see where the end is in mind. But if you truly master back control, I can show you something from crab ride, I can show you something from berimbolo, I can show you something when the guy turtles, and as soon as you see that opening appear, you'll jump on it, right?